The desert wind howled across the Anatolian plateau, kicking up a haze of ochre dust that clung to the skin and stung the eyes. Beneath this barren expanse, lost beneath layers of time and stone, a secret had been sealed for 9 millennia. In 1963, during an unremarkable home renovation in the Turkish town of Derinkuyu, a man knocked down a wall in his basement and uncovered a tunnel. It did not lead to a simple crawl space or forgotten cellar. It led to a gateway into the deep past. Carved into volcanic rock, descending level after level, was a vast subterranean city. Not a refuge, not a shelter. What stunned archaeologists wasn't just the scale of the underground metropolis, capable of housing over 20,000 people, but the age. Carbon dating of soot and organic remains pointed to its earliest construction around 7000 BCE, thousands of years before the Egyptian pyramids or Sumerian ziggurats. The deeper the exploration went, the stranger the design became. Some chambers were too small for adult humans to move comfortably, yet they bore signs of purposeful design. Others were acoustically tuned, amplifying whispers into thunderous echoes. Who carved this vast, complex labyrinth with primitive tools? And more terrifyingly, why? At first, researchers proposed the underground city was a defense against marauding invaders or natural disasters. But those explanations unraveled when they discovered enormous circular stone doors, some weighing over 1,000 pounds, that could only be sealed from the inside. The construction bore no signs of panic or haste. The city had been carefully planned and methodically excavated with precision and intent. Whatever had driven these ancient people underground, it was no passing threat. It was a presence that lingered. Scratched into the walls of the lower chambers were glyphs, unfamiliar symbols that bore no resemblance to known Anatolian or Mesopotamian scripts. Some depicted humanoid figures with elongated skulls, eyes like sunbursts, and limbs bent at unnatural angles. One chamber in particular, sealed behind a stone slab smeared with cinnabar and bitumen, contained a single object, a black obelisk no taller than a man's chest. Humming faintly when touched, the artifact has since disappeared, officially denied by authorities, but those who handled it spoke of hallucinations, dreams of lightless voids, and the sensation of something watching from beneath the earth. Archaeologist Dr. Hakan Özdemir, who led one of the early expeditions into the lower levels, vanished during a solo exploration of the deepest tier. His final radio transmission was incoherent, punctuated by static and whispered voices in a tongue no one could identify. The last intelligible word he spoke was, "They're not gone." His journal, recovered from the mouth of a well shaft days later, contained the repeated phrase in Latin, "Sub terra dormiunt," they sleep beneath the earth. A new theory emerged, whispered among scholars and quietly dismissed by institutions. Derinkuyu wasn't a city built for survival, but a tomb, a prison. Not for the living, but for something else, something that could not be killed. The layout of the city mimicked ancient binding patterns found in Hermetic grimoires and forbidden Mesopotamian rituals of containment. 12 spiraling corridors converged at a central chamber where, according to old notes never officially published, a circular depression lined with obsidian lay like an altar, or a lock. Satellite scans of the surrounding region revealed a pattern. Derinkuyu was not an isolated structure, but part of a vast grid, interconnected underground sites extending hundreds of kilometers. When connected on a map, they formed a symbol nearly identical to the Sumerian sigil of Namtaru, the gatekeeper of the abyss. Scholars who spoke out about the implications found themselves ostracized, their funding cut, their academic papers retracted. A few disappeared. Others suffered breakdowns, muttering about echoes in the stone and the city that breathes. In 2014, a construction project in nearby Nevşehir uncovered another subterranean complex, even older than Derinkuyu. This time there were no livable quarters, only corridors covered in scorched marks and bone fragments charred beyond recognition. A tunnel connected it directly to Derinkuyu's lowest levels, suggesting they were once part of a single massive underworld structure. At the tunnel's midpoint, archaeologists found a chamber with inscriptions written in Proto-Sumerian. Translated crudely, the message read, "We could not kill the gods below, we could only starve them." What civilization predates the Sumerians by thousands of years and possessed knowledge of geometry, architecture, and ritual magic? Was there once a forgotten epoch, erased from history and memory, in which mankind was not alone? When the veil between worlds was thin, the Derinkuyu complex does not speak of survival, it speaks of desperation. Not from war or weather, but from something whose very presence drove entire populations underground, something sealed and buried not out of reverence but out of fear. And yet, in recent years, seismic activity has intensified near Derinkuyu. Cracks have appeared in the deeper vaults. The ventilation shafts, long thought dormant, have begun to release faint currents of warm air. Sensors detect rhythmic vibrations, almost like breath. Some researchers have heard a sound, a low-frequency hum, that travels up through the stone into the night sky. One described it as a heartbeat in reverse. But questions remain. Who were the builders of this lost civilization? What power did they fear so much that they carved entire cities beneath the ground? Why were entire generations buried alive, their histories erased, their voices silenced? And if Derinkuyu was a lock, then where is the key? Or worse, has someone already found it? On the eve of a recent eclipse, local shepherds reported strange lights near the mouth of a recently unearthed tunnel. Lights that did not flicker like fire or behave like drones, circular, pulsing, synchronized to the beat of something deeper. One elderly man swore he saw figures standing in the opening. Tall, unmoving, and entirely silent. When asked what they were doing, he whispered, "Waiting, just wait." And as the researchers prepare to enter the newly revealed chamber, now cleared of debris and lined with unknown metalwork, a final message has emerged, etched in a spiraling script on the last stone door, one never meant to be opened. It reads, "We gave our breath to seal the gate. Let no man take it back." The mouth opens not with sound, but with hunger. Then came the sound, deep, resonant, and rising, not from the air, from the stone itself, like something vast, exhaling. The first scream wasn't heard through the air, it traveled through the stone, low, guttural, and felt more than heard. The team inside the newly opened chamber froze. Their headlamps illuminated strange metallic filigree etched into the rock, pulsing faintly, as if reacting to their presence. One of the archaeologists reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers grazed the cold surface, every light died. For a brief instant, the darkness wasn't empty. It was crowded. Upper returned seconds later, but something had changed. Their digital clocks had reset. The air had thickened, radios buzzed with static, overlaid with whispers in reversed phonetics. Outside, seismic monitors registered no disturbance, but inside, in the newly exposed tunnel, something had begun to shift. The walls were warm. Breathing. In the control tent above ground, a technician stared in disbelief as instruments displayed a slow, pulsing frequency, 7.83 Hz, the exact resonance of the Earth's Schumann frequency, but inverted. In Istanbul, the Turkish Ministry of Culture quietly sealed off all access to Derinkuyu. The press was fed a story about an unstable tunnel collapse, but in truth a multinational black site research team had arrived within 48 hours. They brought ancient texts, satellite scanning arrays, and something far more curious, priests, not of any known religion, but men in dark robes who spoke in whispers and carried relics bound in iron. Their insignia bore the symbol of a triple spiral inside a broken circle. When asked who they represented, they answered only, the keepers of the mouth. Deep within the lower levels, the obelisk chamber, once thought sealed, was found disturbed. Not destroyed, moved. The obelisk itself was gone. In its place was a circle of burnt ash, at the center of which sat a single stone eye, carved in impossibly fine detail, pupil dilated as if in fear. Dr. Emil Merin, an expert in pre-Diluvian symbols, traced the markings and turned pale. The eye bore the exact inscription as the Black Codex of Enoch: "He who waits beneath shall trade sleep for silence." 3 researchers reportedly went mad over the next 12 days. One tore out his own eyes, muttering about lenses that see too clearly. Another vanished entirely from a locked medical tent. All that remained was a smear of salt across the mattress. The third attempted to speak an ancient name, a syllabic phrase composed of throat-rending sounds. Before he could finish, he convulsed and died, every vein in his body blackened, as if ink had replaced his blood. The priests, or keepers, conducted a rite in the lowest accessible chamber. No documentation exists of the ritual itself, but sound recordings picked up deep harmonic tones, a chant that oscillated between frequencies audible and inaudible. The granite walls trembled, one technician's eardrums burst. He would later describe a vision of cities beneath the bones of the world, populated by creatures with mouths stitched shut, clawing eternally toward the ceiling. Then came the blackout. 47 minutes of total sensor failure from all equipment. Every camera feed, every satellite ping, every biosignal. Gone. When power returned, so did the smell. Sulfur. Ozone. Something older. The team found one of the stone discs, once used to seal Derinkuyu's upper corridors, now rolled aside. Behind it was a fresh tunnel, smooth and damp. It hadn't been carved. It had been grown. Within this living corridor, walls glistened with a black film that defied analysis. It absorbed light, sound, even thought. Those who entered described memories not their own, visions of a skyless age, of beings who sang in vibrations, who warred not with weapons but with frequencies that shattered time. The scientists called it a memory echo. The keepers called it something else. The song of the buried god. Satellite footage revealed something impossible. Around the region of Derinkuyu, plants began to wither in concentric circles. Animals refused to approach the area. Migratory birds diverted from their paths, and a new phenomenon began to emerge. Dreams. Thousands of locals reported identical dreams, of a city beneath their feet, with no sun and no sky, where a great door was being unsealed by hands not human. Among the records left behind by the original ancient builders was a curious object, a stone tablet with 9 concentric spirals. Each spiral was embedded with a different mineral. When struck, each produced a different tone, a harmonic resonance that, when played in sequence, seemed to match the layout of the underground city's levels. The tones were recorded and fed into a simulation. That was when the second event occurred. Beneath the lowest level, a long-forgotten chamber split open, unnaturally clean, as if untouched by time. On its walls were bas-reliefs not of people or gods, but of stars, constellations that matched no current sky, and in the center an indentation in the form of a man, but far too tall, with a widened skull, 6 fingers and ribs that curved like harp strings. The indentation was not an artwork, it was a mole. A hidden civilization, perhaps not human, had once ruled or perhaps watched from beneath. Their tools were not stone or bronze, but vibration, frequency, sacrifice. They had been buried not merely by stone, but by time, by memory, by intent. The story of Derinkuyu was not just one of survival, but of containment. The ancients did not fear death. They feared what death could not silence. And now, it cracks again. A new tunnel has appeared, one no team has entered, one that does not register on sonar or ground-penetrating radar. It spirals downward infinitely, lined with symbols that burn cold to the touch. The keepers will not speak of it. The lead scientist has gone missing, and in his journal, pages torn and blood-smeared, the final entry reads, "It isn't a city, It's a throat, and it's starting to whisper again. The voice rises when the walls thin. The end begins with a single name remembered. And somewhere, beneath the rock, behind walls meant to last forever, something ancient shifts. Do not knock upon the gate whose hinges are time itself. The whispering grew louder, but not to the ear. It unfolded in dreams, in visions, in thoughts that did not begin within the minds of those experiencing them. All across the excavation site, people began murmuring in sleep, repeating syllables that had no linguistic root in any known tongue. The frequency of these occurrences spiked every 27 hours, precisely timed with deep earth tremors no seismograph could trace, as if something was moving, not above, but beneath the very foundations of Derinkuyu. The newly discovered spiral tunnel, the one unseen by radar, was now growing. Measuring instruments confirmed the impossible. It was expanding, deepening, as if digging itself further into the earth, yet no debris, no displacement, no dust. Just the silent emergence of a perfect, widening descent. Several team members refused to go near it. One, a linguist who had been studying the repeating dream phrases, claimed to see writing on the tunnel walls, letters that vanished when anyone else approached. Before she disappeared, she wrote in shaking script, "It's learning how to be read." Above ground, things began to unravel. Birds were no longer seen. Dogs howled at corners where nothing stood. Instruments malfunctioned. Communications failed. A helicopter sent to extract the remaining researchers circled twice and turned away mid-flight, citing navigation distortion. No one in the cockpit remembered issuing the command. The team had no choice but to go deeper, or stay and vanish. There was no neutral ground now. Within the tunnel's deepening spiral, they found the lining, a seamless membrane of unknown substance that glowed faintly blue when touched. It was warm, pulsing. When cut, it released not blood but sound, low-frequency tones that made some collapse in seizures. Dr. Halverson, a physicist on site, theorized the structure was not organic, but sentient frequency in physical form. "We're not in a tunnel," he muttered, "we're in a vocal cord." Hours later, he threw himself into the void. In one chamber just above the lowest known level, they found a mural, not carved into the stone. It depicted a scene alien to human history. Humanoid figures ascending from the sky, cloaked in robes of black flame, their hands casting beams of radiant geometry downward into kneeling crowds. Among the kneeling were elongated figures being pulled into the earth like smoke drawn into a crack. A sigil floated above the scene, a spiral intersected by a vertical line, the same symbol now imprinted onto the arms of multiple researchers who had claimed to see clearly. Reports now filtered in from other regions. Similar structures were appearing, smaller but unmistakable echoes of Derinkuyu. One beneath Lake Van, another near Mount Nemrut. Satellite imaging showed faint, glowing spirals blooming in fields, only visible in infrared and only for minutes at a time. These patterns matched those found on Sumerian relics, locked away in the British Museum, etched into tablets catalogued as precuneiform ritual nonsense. But now those patterns were forming again, on land, in crops, in skin. An emergency committee convened within a sealed underground NATO facility in Brussels. Most called for containment, a few urged deeper study, but one, an elderly Vatican emissary with eyes clouded by age and knowledge, said nothing until the end. Then, in a voice low and shaking, he whispered, "We sealed them before, but the earth forgets, and now it sings again." He died that night, his veins crystallized from within. The team now numbered only 8. Cameras, drones, all electronic equipment ceased functioning within the spiral tunnel. They proceeded manually, lighting torches as their ancestors might have. The air thickened. Echoes arrived before their voices did. One man, Dr. Raj, stood still for a moment too long, his body calcified in seconds, transforming into a pillar of salt and iron dust. On his face a look of ecstasy, as though he had finally heard a name he had long forgotten he was waiting for. In the depths, they reached what should have been the end, a chasm, miles across, black as starless space. In its center, a structure suspended by nothing, hovering, turning slowly. It was not stone, not metal. It shimmered between forms, a sphere, a cube, a lattice of circles. Reality bent around it, and beneath it, far below, something breathed. Slowly, anciently. One of the keepers dropped to his knees and spoke a phrase none recognized, but all understood. They lowered a probe. It disintegrated. Then they heard a sound. So low it bypassed ears and vibrated bones. It spoke through them, not to them. Language was irrelevant. The message was presence. And in that presence memory returned. Not their own, but of something older. Civilizations burned, time rewound. Flesh shaped by tone. Worlds that drowned in vibration. A will that could not be broken, only buried. A fissure opened in the far side of the chasm. From it came windless movement, shadows that did not flicker, gliding silently along walls, mimicking the movements of those above. One of the researchers, wide-eyed and unblinking, reached out and whispered, "I remember who I was before time." He stepped into the dark. He did not return. Above ground, reports of mass sleep disturbances erupted worldwide. People speaking dead languages in their dreams. Children drawing spirals on walls, floors, and each other. In the Arctic, beneath the melting permafrost, a similar spiral chamber had been discovered. The spiral was global, and always it led downward. And now, in the final chamber beneath Derinkuyu, the last remaining researchers stand before an opening that was not there yesterday. It breathes. It invites. The walls thrum with a rhythm not unlike a human heartbeat, but too slow, too vast. A heartbeat meant for something older than flesh. And just before the recording cuts to static, one voice is heard, trembling and reverent. It's not a city. It's not a tomb. It's a warning carved into the skin of the earth. Then the audio dies, and silence returns. But silence is not stillness. What was buried alive remembers who buried it. The last signal from Derinkuyu came not from voice or video, but from vibration. A single sustained frequency, 19.98 Hz, pulsed up through the bedrock, through the hollowed veins of the earth, and was recorded by distant seismic arrays as far as Siberia, Sudan, and southern Peru. Geologists called it a harmonic anomaly, but those who had studied the old glyphs, the sigils, the forbidden charts etched beneath the earth recognized it for what it was, the first chord in a long-dead song. A song designed not to soothe, but to wake. No contact has been made with the Derinkuyu team since that moment. Drones sent into the site never returned. Military reconnaissance aircraft reported magnetic interference, and one pilot described the site of the plateau breathing as if the land itself were expanding and contracting. All satellite imagery within a 2-kilometer radius became corrupted. Pixelated spirals burned into digital render. Derinkuyu had gone dark, not silent, not dead, dark. Beneath the earth, in that unfathomable spiral, the last survivors had descended past architecture, past carved rock, past fossilized remains. They now walked along what could not have been constructed by hands. The walls of the spiral were no longer walls, but something like skin, translucent, veined, warm. The tunnel moved imperceptibly, drawing them downward without effort. They no longer needed food, or water, or sleep. Only purpose. Dr. Zahar, now stripped of her tools and most of her memory, clutched an artifact retrieved from the mural chamber. A perfectly smooth disk of black crystal. It sang when touched. Not to the ears, but to the mind. Within its resonance lived images not her own, a civilization beneath the stars, speaking in frequencies, worshipping not gods but vibrations, binding consciousness to geometry. She understood now. Derinkuyu was not just a city. It was a seal, a metaphysical lock placed around something that did not speak in time or language but in thought forms. Elsewhere, the signs were converging. In the Vatican's secret archives, a scroll marked Anima Profunda, the deep soul, had begun to decay in a way that defied physics, the ink melting upward into the air. In Tibet, monks closed off entire monasteries after reports of voices inside the void between breaths. And in the Brazilian rainforest, an uncontacted tribe was found chanting in a dialect eerily similar to the Derinkuyu spirals, though no such linguistic connection could exist. The last remaining footage recovered from a helmet-mount camera, corrupted, distorted, revealed an image both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a structure in the deep that appeared to fold space around itself. Angles that bent and reformed, doors that bled light, and a central eye, impossibly vast, set within a ring of teeth not made for flesh but for thought. In its presence, reality trembled. Dr. Zaharan's voice was recorded one final time, though she had no device. It was as if the rock itself remembered her words. She said, "This wasn't the first time. The ancients built this to delay the cycle, not to stop it. They knew the earth couldn't hold it forever. Then, it's not awakening, it's returning." The last passage, the one that had opened in the final chamber, was not a door. It was a mouth, lined with organic matter, echoing tones that grew louder with each step. It seemed to know the names of those who approached. Not spoken aloud, but carried on breath. One by one they stepped forward, each vanished into the dark. There was no scream, only the folding of silence. And now strange occurrences ripple outward. Livestock across rural Anatolia fall dead without cause. Monoliths are discovered in obscure mountain ranges, each vibrating faintly in the night. The dreams of thousands converge on a single word, one never spoken in any language. Nerka, a name from no history, no myth, no book, yet all seem to know it instinctively. A name they feel rather than hear. A name that doesn't belong to any god, but to something older than worship. The keepers, those who remained, have sealed themselves in crypts across the globe, performing ancient rites in whispered tones, not to stop what's coming, but to slow it. They speak of the breath cycle, of the third inversion, and of the time when earth will echo like a bell struck from within. One final warning has been decoded from a long-forgotten scroll in the library of Alexandria, written in mirrored Aramaic. When the ninth gate bleeds light and the stone sings backwards, the buried mind shall rise, and the world will remember it was never alone. It was not we who sealed them in, but they who allowed themselves to be sealed. The earth trembles once more, the spiral opens, the city breathes. But something begins to climb. The return is not an invasion, it is an inheritance.